So I wanted to touch back on what you mentioned before we dove in to you and your background. But you're talking how you're in you feel like you're in the doomsday scenario right now, and I wanted to expand on that too. Like for those of us who aren't immersed in your world, you know, explain like what is that doomsday scenario that you're feeling right now?
Yeah, so I think we were talking that I wouldn't say construction was entirely, pandemic proof, but it was one of those industries that during the pandemic mostly stayed, fully operational. And to some degree, projects were accelerated because, facilities were empty, they weren't, occupied. It adjusted a lot of things. Schoolwork, K to 12, they were empty. They got to move things along. I know we were talking like healthcare kind of went quiet for a while, but now that in the post-pandemic, we've seen that, come back online in full force. But during the pandemic, construction and general contractors mostly stayed in operation. Partner that with the contracting space, GCs and subcontractors having access to triple P money that they were able to obtain, demonstrate that they used for payroll and get forgiveness on. So they all got this really healthy boost to their balance sheets in 2020 and in some cases 2021. This year, we're seeing, we saw the forgiveness of all those. This year, I think we'll see a lot of them take that off their balance sheet. There's some financial behaviors there we got to watch. I'd still say the construction industry is really robust. There's more work out there than there ever has been. So we're seeing really healthy backlogs. So I think it will place a strain on the marketplace from a labor availability and subcontractor performance capability. So you're running at mock speed with all these things. A lot of triple P money flowing in, getting forgiven, backlogs growing, balance sheets at an all-time high. But you partner that now with the post-pandemic stuff, which is, significant market volatility of escalation, supply chain strain. We've got obviously an event happening overseas right now that throws a real wrench into things. All of these other factors that are sort of, you run both of those together, at mock speed. I feel like we're coming to the edge of a cliff potentially, which is, that doomsday of,
yeah.
all of these scenarios happening in perfect storm, something has to give, it's sort of, what happens. What my fear is that triple P money comes off the balance sheets. Subcontractors don't have the health that they were conveying that they had. A lot of these pressures from the supply chain and market volatility and escalation, they're not able to absorb or gets poorly managed at a subcontractor deal level. It's going to create a lot of pressure, I think, in the marketplace.
I mean, I imagine the supply chain aspect being such a big impact because if everything's slower, so your project, I mean, you get your materials slower, so your project moves slower. So like it costs you more money and it delays how long you're done. Like it's just makes everything move at molasses pace. And so then you have these workers who can't go on to the next job because they're still on this job, or you have them going to the next job while they're waiting for the supplies to come into this job, and you might lose them.
So that we haven't seen. A lot of the strategy, obviously, to curb the supply chain was early release, pre-purchase of materials, whether you do that through the GC directly or the subcontractor. But addressing one problem creates another one. That's sort of the world we live in, is that there doesn't matter where you move, the gray cloud's going to follow me. But you try to address that risk by pre-purchasing materials or paying for stored materials, but that creates a risk. If you buy materials through a subcontractor early, you've got to store them. You've got to hope that they're going to stay in business long enough to deliver those to your project, or have a means to manage that, after you've let that, you're paying for something that's not a finished product yet. So there's risks with doing that. So you shift risk from schedule risk to finance risk. So I guess that's what I'm talking about. Both sides of my mouth is one risk creates another. Addressing one creates the other. So that we've seen a lot of that pre-purchase of materials, early releases to kind of curb that schedule supply chain strain. Really now the bigger problem is that escalatory market volatility. You know, we've talked with our GCs recently. Their stuff that they estimated only a short time ago to set out, you know, bids and GMPs on is coming in, you know, way off the map. You know, something I'm trying to use a scale, like a project that was 60 million is now coming in at 80.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we're trying to push all of that escalatory and inflationary risk to the subcontractors. You know, that's part of your risk. And they're either padding it or they're setting out, you know, my bid is good for today and today only. And if you don't let me release those materials today, I have no clue what they're going to cost tomorrow. I'm obviously generalizing, but that's sort of the
But
general.
you can't count on things maybe the way that we used to be able to count on things in the industry. So it's like you
Yeah.
said, everything's so volatile. It's hard to sort of pin things down sometimes.
Yeah, and honestly, that just that is a credit risk to the subcontractor if we don't get a GC that partners up with them. So we're hopeful our GCs are setting out some reasonable, you know, parameters when they're trying to manage that. You know, set some sort of baseline escalation or commodity price and say, look, you know, at the time you release it and you can confirm whatever you paid, we'll carry the difference in an allowance. So we're hopeful for those behaviors, and that's what we're talking about and trying to advocate that they do. But we can't say that's uniformly happening and that we can't insulate ourselves from some potential loss that will happen there.